All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our LinkedIn Live with special guest Lesley Hunter. Really, really excited for this conversation. So, for those of you that aren't familiar with our firm or me, I am Debra Boggs, CEO of D&S Executive Career Management. And we are a firm that works with senior leaders, typically C-level and board level leaders, to navigate and land your next big thing. So, whatever it is for you to land that next big C-suite role or launch your board career or level up from private company board leadership to public company board leadership, those are the things that we work one-on-one with candidates to do. And we are so excited for this conversation because, as you may know, we do a lot of LinkedIn Lives and a lot of conversations around how to succeed in your career, how to level up, how to be the highest performer in the room. And one thing we don't talk a lot about, but really should, is the mental health toll that can take on a lot of people. And so we're going to really be digging into this in a really candid way today. So before we get started, I'll introduce our guest, but please pop in the comments where you're joining us from. I'd love to see where everyone's at. I'd love to see, kind of who's in the room with us. And if you have any questions about working with our team to help you land your next big thing faster, Carmen Poff is in the background and will pop on in the chat how to meet with her to talk more about how we work with candidates on a one-on-one basis. So thank you so much for joining us. Can't wait to see who's out in the audience while I introduce our special guest, Lesley Hunter. So Lesley, so excited to talk about this because her background is incredible, and I know that you'll all really enjoy meeting her. She is a good friend, a former colleague, and the author of the new book, Madness to Manifestation, in addition to being a speaker, business owner, former pageant queen at the state and world levels. So that's so incredible. And on top of those things, Lesley holds a master's degree in international business, a bachelor's in economics, is a certified executive resume writer, and as a true Renaissance woman, she's also a classically trained pianist, an avid chess player, and speaks Italian and French. So she really brings a unique blend of personal credibility and vulnerability to the conversations about mental health, high performance, and reinvention. And today she's offering a grounded perspective on what it's really like to navigate crisis, rebuild, redefine success, especially as it relates to high achieving professionals and senior leaders we work with so often. So please help me welcome Lesley, and thanks so much for joining us.
I am so happy to be here. You make me sound so good. Thank you.
You are so good. You're
Aw,
incredible.
thank you, Deborah. I'm delighted to be here and be contribute to this very well needed conversation.
Yeah, certainly. I know it's something, this conversation comes after, a personal conversation you and I were having recently as we were catching up, and I said how much I admire you being so out there in the world, especially as the author of your new book, with your mental health struggles, because as an entrepreneur and someone who's out there, every day, with myself, I don't talk enough about mental health and my own struggles. And so I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So let's start with while people pop in the chat where they're joining us from. Hey, Greg in Colorado, good to see you. Tell us what led you to write this book, because I know it's a deeply personal story.
Yes. So, Madness to Manifestation, this book started as something extremely personal. So, after my own mental health crisis, I went from being, as you know, constantly in motion, from
Yes.
creating, performing, all of that good stuff, to unfortunately barely being able to function some days.
Wow.
I was really forced to slow down, to sit in silence and to look at every area of my life, which included my identity, work, relationships, and what I believed about success. So, writing became a way to make sense of that madness and to document how I slowly rebuilt. And then I
Yeah.
decided to share my story because I know there are so many people who look, fine on
Yes.
LinkedIn. I know in the boardroom or on stage even, but who are quietly falling apart. I really wanted them to see themselves in my story and to know that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to slow down. And starting over doesn't disqualify you as a leader. It can actually make you a stronger, more compassionate one.
That's such an important message. It's okay to slow down. It's okay to take a pause. And that's one of the things I have to learn that lesson a lot. Unfortunately, as someone who struggles with depression, I I am in constant motion as well, right? Because I know that if I stop moving, that's usually where I start to spiral a little bit. And so I know that if I'm continuously moving, but at a certain point, that becomes really unhealthy. And you
Yes,
have to be able to sit in that silence. And that's one of those things. I know you and I talked offline about how uncomfortable that silence can be when you're in constant motion and you're not used to it. And so I know a lot of the senior leaders we work with that maybe are facing a layoff, they just left a role, whatever that might be, they're forced to sit for the first time in a long time, can be really, really hard.
it can
So
be.
yeah, I know I often tell people if they call me right after a layoff, taking time to sit is an action item, and it's an
Yep.
important. Um, so let's talk a little bit about that. I know perfectionism is something we struggle with, and I say we as senior leaders, high performers, right? We want to do it all. We want to have it all. We want to, we're often in high profile situations, but that pressure to be perfect can really lead to some other issues. So I'd love for you to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfectionism can be dangerous, and I say that partially identifying as a as a perfectionist.
Yes.
I've learned I've learned that delicate balance between getting things done, but not obsessively. So it's subtle because perfectionism can look like high standards, and
Hmm.
oftentimes it is having high standards, but it can also keep people stuck, and that
Yeah.
can be in the form of for what we do, endlessly editing a resume. I know you can we can both relate. Over preparing for every conversation, or staying in roles that are breaking the person because they're afraid of making a less than perfect move. So
Yeah.
perfectionism disguises itself as excellence, but underneath it often shows up as procrastination,
Yes.
burnout, or that analysis paralysis that a lot of people and high performers can get into. So I think that just being aware that I understand that quality is very important. I think
Right.
most high performers like quality, but keep the ball moving as well. When you get to
Yeah.
that point where we're doing okay, and you're continuing to try to perfect it and getting into that zone of being less effective and being and less maximizing your time and getting stuck, you want to move forward. Put that to rest, and go work
Right.
on something else.
You're so right, because we can spin, right? And if someone is, especially, I love your point about it can be a sign of procrastination, right? Of just not wanting to
True.
go out and do the thing because there's fear or there's hesitation in some way. And so that perfectionism can keep you spinning your wheels. I see this a lot in people that are looking to launch their fractional careers or looking to become consultants after a full-time career. And they spend so much time and energy making their pitch perfect and building the perfect website and getting everything absolutely dialed in, and at the same time they're not actually moving the ball forward at all. And
Exactly.
that can cause other anxiety and issues, if you don't go to market in a timely manner, right? um,
Yes.
and then it just continues to self-fulfill, which can be such a struggle.
That's so true. Sometimes you just got to dive in.
You do. You have to just go do the thing. I
Yeah.
tell people a lot, like, especially if it's a consultant or something like that, your services are going to change. So don't wait for them to be perfect. Go out and market test and see what's
That's
working, and,
true.
and go do the thing. Same thing in the resume writing space. I know you and I work with senior leaders to build their resumes and their narratives. And sometimes they can get so bogged down in word choice. And sometimes it's like, you know what?
Mhm.
We're now changing things we've already changed. Let's just go out and try it in the market, and we can iterate. This doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing, and we need to
Absolutely.
remember that. And so I know that you and I've had a conversation offline about this as well. And for anyone just joining us, please pop in the chat where you're joining us from. We'd love to
Yeah,
see
I'd
who's
love to
out
know.
there. And if you have any questions for myself or for Lesley, please pop that in the chat as well. And we'll do our best to cover these, because with this being a special conversation, a deeper conversation, we are certainly open to going beyond our normal half an hour into a 45-minute call, especially if anyone wants to talk about anything really specific. So one of the things you and I talked about offline, kind of human to human, is how senior leaders and high performers can balance the, protecting their professional reputations while also building in those boundaries to protect your mental health. A lot of times if we are high profile or we're out there a lot, we don't want to talk about mental health issues. I know, myself included, I don't do enough talking about it so other people know, because I get calls from friends and things saying, wow, looks like you're killing it. Online looks amazing. You're here, there, you're everywhere. But I don't talk about the times that are really, really hard and the things that we struggle with and the mental health challenges that I face that my team knows about because we have to set boundaries, but that I
Yeah.
don't necessarily, get out online and talk about, which thank you for spurring this conversation. So how how do you see, balancing that, protecting your professional reputation and your mental health at the same time?
Yeah, no, that's a wonderful question, and I have several suggestions, and I can make several points here. So feel free to jump in,
You're
whenever you'd
fine.
like, whenever you'd like. Well, the first suggestion I would say, or a food for thought, is that leaders can normalize conversations before a crisis. I
Yeah.
think it's important to not wait until someone reaches a breaking point, and some things that organizations can do to offset a potential crisis is to regularly discuss wellness,
Hmm.
train managers to recognize warning signs, and that kind of goes with including mental well-being and leadership development. For example, let's normalize well-being check-ins. Maybe a
Yeah.
leader or manager asks, "How are you managing your workload? Is there anything getting in the way of your best work, or what support would be helpful right now?" So I think, checking in with employees as people, not
Right.
just, producing machines or performers. And then,
Right.
for leaders to, with that, try to eliminate unrealistic deadlines or constant urgency, or too much excessive after hours expectations, things that kind of lessen pressure. So that's
Hmm.
that's one thing I would suggest. I think also people don't listen to what leaders say or what people say. We all watch what people, including leaders, do, and I feel
Right.
that the culture of an organization often mirrors the behavior of its leaders. So if leaders if, and we're all guilty of it. I am as
Yeah.
well. But I will say that if leaders pretend they never struggle, employees learn that vulnerability isn't safe. And I
Right.
understand because I've, been through it myself where, as you mentioned, people will say like, "Oh my God, you're killing it." And in fairness, sometimes I am. I'm not going to say that I'm not.
Right?
But then there
Sometimes I'm really doing great.
but then there have been other times where I have been internally struggling, but you would never know,
Hmm.
from looking at whether it's my social media or anything like that. And I was telling a couple of close girlfriends the other day, I shared with them a TED talk by an amazing actress, Cheryl Lee, I forgot her last name, but anyway, an amazing actress, and she was literally saying that she doesn't look like her struggle, and and I feel like a lot of high performers, we don't look like our struggle, but there
Right.
there should be a way to show vulnerability without maybe disclosing things that are deeply personal details,
Yeah.
but maybe normalizing conversations. Leaders can normalize conversations about stress, setbacks, seeking support, maybe sharing appropriate professional examples from their own experience. Even you sharing about the fact that you've struggled with depression, I think is very open, and I admire it, and vulnerable. Obviously, I've been very open about my mental health
Yeah.
challenges, and I think that that helps others to feel like, oh wow, Lesley or Deborah, they seem like Superwoman over here,
Right.
and
Exactly. We're
and
doing all the things.
yeah, they're doing all the things, but wow, even they've gone through some challenges, and I feel like that helps anyone, including
Right.
employees or people that you're working with in a team setting, feel like you're approachable, feel like there's more empathy and understanding, which opens up conversation. So I think that is something that leaders can do, kind of show vulnerability in ways that
Yeah.
still feel comfortable, but also encourage employees and people that they work with to open up and have relaxation. So kind of and also leaders showing that they can take time off,
Right.
encouraging rest or asking for help. I know that you and your husband have gone on vacation, which you should, for your
Right.
anniversary, and showing those type of things also encourages other people that they should do that too. It's all in balance, of course. So it's
It
not like, oh, we got
is.
to grind through everything. We can't celebrate anything. We just have to work,
Right.
work,
We
work.
can't grind all the time. And even when life is hard or work is hard or things are going on, we just can't keep the ball rolling all of the time. And I think, one of the things we implemented about a year ago, and I know you and I talked about this, is the we have mandatory mental health days for our full-time team to take a day off a month that doesn't involve vacation time, that is just a day to be out of the office, and that's totally unplugged. You're not getting phone calls, you're not getting emails from the team, you're not getting Slack messages. You get to completely unplug, no questions asked, once a month, to at least take that time. And honestly, what that has done for us is, as you mentioned, like leadership modeling it for the team, it has given me the mental permission that even when work is hard, even when there's a lot going on, even when, it's not a great time to take time off, it gives me the permission to say, okay, I have to check out for a minute, because that's going to model to the team that it's okay to take time off, because otherwise we're never going to do it. And so how do you take that time, unplug, unwind, reset, spend time with my husband, right? Spend time with, I've got teenagers. That's a whole thing that I don't know if I'm prepared for. How are you fitting life into work? And that is one of those things that we really need to talk about. And there's a question in the chat I'd love to talk about.
Yeah,
So Greg asked, and I know we were going to talk about this towards the end, but I'd love to talk about this
yeah.
now. How do you manage your mindset when you've encountered a setback? So someone who's maybe been laid off or is in the job market for a lot longer than anticipated. I know we talked a little bit about the need for confidence in the job search and how that can be really hard for someone who's just, had a big setback in their personal life. But how do you manage your mindset through those things?
Yeah. So, oh, yes, many things, many things come to mind too. But yes, if you're in the job search and managing, either a setback or a mental health challenge, one of the things I would say is that keep in mind that your diagnosis is not your identity. So,
Hmm.
if it is a mental health challenge, for example, so one of the first things I had to learn was that my diagnosis wasn't my identity. It was one part of my life, not my whole story. So I was the same person with the same skills, experience, potential. So mental health setbacks may affect your journey, but it doesn't erase your worth. Um,
Right.
so that's one thing. Um, Also, employers hire for their ability to contribute today, not because a person's had a perfect life. So I feel like sometimes we're so focused on this is what happened to me, this challenge or this traumatic event
Right.
happened to me. And sometimes that we forget all the positive skills that we have and the things that we've accomplished prior to the negative event. You still have these skills, they're still in your
Hmm.
toolbox. So that's something else I would say.
It's a good point.
Yeah, and we all do it. We all
We do.
tend to focus on the sometimes the negative thing, and it's like, but we have all these positive things, and
Right. We
we
have all these things that, we should be. I know my husband is good at reminding me these things, because sometimes when we have a big setback at work or something, and I'm like, oh, I should have seen that coming. I don't know why I didn't see that. I could have done this. I could have done that. And I'm beating myself up about it. And it's like, well, while you weren't seeing that coming, here's all the other things you were doing that moved the ball forward. Like, you can't
exactly.
let one, maybe personal failure or one thing that's just completely out of your control. A lot of times these layoffs have nothing to do with us, have
Yes,
nothing to do with our worth, have nothing to do with what we can provide a company moving forward. It is what it is in that situation at that time, but it doesn't have anything to do with what we're going to go do in the future. And I feel like, a mantra, this is probably not great for mental health, but a mantra I've always lived by is the best revenge is living well.
oh
And
yeah,
so that, a setback like that forces me to say, oh, yeah, well, look at what I'm going to go do next. And I'm going
right.
to do it without you. And I'm going to do it even bigger and better than I had done it in the past.
That's so
And
true.
So Greg, that's what I want for you, is for you to live well by doing the amazing things you have to offer an organization at a different organization, that's going to be even more successful with your help. And real quick, I'm going to pop this note on the on the
Oh,
chat. Carmen
hi,
Poff, who's on our
Carmen.
team, says taking mental health days is so important and appreciated. Thank you, Carmen. But Carmen and I both, we work together. We've worked together for a long time now, several years, and neither of us are great about taking time off. And Carmen says, well, if I don't have anything to do, I'm not going anywhere. Like, I don't need to take the time off. And I feel that way too. If I don't have a reason, like, I should be at the office, quote unquote. But that's not helpful when we need mental time off. We
Yes.
need to just sit and stare at trashy TV, or we need to just take time. And we can't do that if we're constantly grinding. And so I know at the beginning of every month, Carmen and I both have to lean on each other and say, do you have your mental health day scheduled? Yes, no, let's get it on the calendar, because otherwise we don't do it.
Yeah, yeah, it's very important to do. I'm really glad that you all did that. And I correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that you shared with me that um, you had implemented that after a discussion I had with you and another colleague at D&S.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
And it
So,
absolutely
great.
was. It was coming from, and that actually is the perfect tee up to my next question about
Yeah,
how vulnerability can really drive change in this space. Because, even though I, again, struggled deeply with personal issues with depression, which, backstory a little bit, I had never had mental health challenges until I had my first son, and I had debilitating postpartum depression. Didn't see it coming, hit me out of the blue, and it was life changing for me, because it was, when you talk about not being able to get out of bed, like, yes, not being able to get out of bed, not being able to take care of myself or anyone else, it was a really dark time. In that, I never quite got back to quote unquote normal, right? And since then, I've struggled with bouts of depression. And I say this to say, I typically don't talk about that. And so, because I didn't realize you were struggling as well. And you and I had a conversation then, in a work setting, and it made us realize on the leadership team that we don't always recognize it in other people, especially if we're high performers, doing, just doing the grind, doing the thing. And we needed to build space for people so that, number one, they felt comfortable talking about it. And
yeah.
number two, we could catch things before they become burnout, or before they become debilitating.
Absolutely. I think that's amazing. And I know I've told you this, but you sharing with me even before I came to you and told you I needed to take some time because of what I was dealing with, I was more willing to give a little more detail to what I was going through in terms of my mental health challenge, because you had opened up to me and trusted me enough to share with me a little bit about your challenges earlier on. So I really appreciated that. And when I was going to talk to you and your colleague, it made me think, oh, I know Deborah would at least understand, because she has struggled, unfortunately,
Yeah, but that it
herself.
gives me that compassion to know, wow,
Right.
you can't control that, and here's some of the ways that you can. So I think that vulnerability, and I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that, because I know you
Yeah.
mentioned it in the book too, about
Yes.
how, your personal journey about being vulnerable was really a turning point for you. So let's talk a
Yes.
little bit about that.
Yeah. I feel that allowing myself to be vulnerable in regards to my mental health better helped me to improve my mental health. I kind of, when sometimes when we hide something or keep something to ourselves, there's can be, shame around it. But then when you put
Yeah.
it out on the table, you're like, oh, okay, this is this is who I am. This is what I'm dealing with. So
Right.
I can't hide anymore. Let me just address what the issue is, or what the
Yeah.
setback is. And I think it was really cathartic for me. Writing this whole book was extremely cathartic for me. I hope to change many lives through it, but regardless,
For those of just
thank you.
joining us, it's a Madness to Manifestation. There's a link to check it out in the chat, but here's the book.
I love it. I love it. Yay. But I hope to impact many through my story. And at the very minimum, it was just changed my life, because I was able to put onto paper a lot of things that not all deep and dark. There were some fun
Right.
and interesting moments of my life that I share as well. but of course the challenging ones, it was extremely cathartic for me to kind of move through that through the spoken or written word, so to say. So yeah, so kind of being vulnerable and open about my mental health better helped me to improve it. And as we mentioned, talking with you and your colleague about needing some time to address, my mental health setback, I needed to do that to have time to heal and restore myself. And then, it's often, as I mentioned, hard for people to feel vulnerable, especially about their mental health, as they may feel that they'll be judged or stigmatized, sometimes received as weak, quote unquote.
Right.
But it takes courage to seek help,
It does.
or to be opened about challenges that we go through. And it's a long-term advantage in terms of even organizationally for both the employee and the organization when its employees can feel that they can come and talk about these matters and they can be addressed. So yes, I hope that answered your answered your
It
question.
does. I think,
Yeah.
you're right. And you bring up a good point of, from a leadership perspective, having, you know, employees that feel like they're supported and in a good place, it is a productivity win, right? Because people are doing their best work, they're taking a break, they're coming back refreshed. I know if and I know a lot of people probably fall into this category too, but like, if things are tough or I'm feeling not in my best place, then I tend to go deep into work, right? That's my default mode is work.
Sure.
Um, and and so when that's happening, I can then overwork because I'm just like deep in it and I'm not taking a break and I'm not I'm not taking time to breathe. And then I'm not doing my best work. I'm not delivering at the
Right.
level I could be because I'm overworking, right? And I think, taking that giving everyone the space to take that time is so important to make sure that you're really coming at it from a refreshed, positive, rested mindset, right?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
So on the topic of, maybe digging too deeply into work, and I know we talked a little bit about this as if, people are facing a layoff or things like that, but so many people, especially senior leaders, high performers, our careers are our identities in a lot of ways. And even if we are, have a spouse, don't have a spouse, have kids, whatever, but our careers are really a huge part of our identity. So how did your mental health journey, especially recently, change the way you think about success?
Yeah, great question. Well, as you mentioned, many people, their careers are a big part of their identity, and my career was a huge part of my identity as well because I put a lot of energy into it. I don't have a literal child or baby, so my career was my baby. It
Right.
essentially was my baby. So when I encountered a crisis, affecting my mental health, it robbed me of many things, including, the energy I had to exert into my careers. As you mentioned as well, some days I didn't have the energy to get out of bed or take a
Mhm.
shower, to be very transparent. And
Yeah.
this was very foreign to me. So, outside of any psychological turmoil going on, I began to think deeply, not just about my career, but my life, my purpose, my identities, what really matters
Mhm.
to me. Basic functioning was one of them. Just talk about starting from the ground up. I literally was
Wow.
like, if I can get out of bed today and brush my teeth and shower, that's a good day.
Yeah.
Then it kind of went to, all right, I did those things. I love working out a lot, but at the time where I was really down, it was hard to kind of felt like it was hard to physically move. So when I got to the point of taking a walk, I'm like, okay, I'm doing better. And then
Yeah.
struggle with my sleep a lot, but then I got to a point where my sleep was improving. And I was like, wow, that's a win. So these are basic things for many people, being able to shower, move your legs, go walk, have decent sleep. But for me to be able to accomplish those things when I was at my lowest was a huge win. So
Yeah.
so that was success for me when
Yes.
I was, at my lowest, totally
Count your
different.
wins where they are, right? If every day is getting a
Exactly.
little better, I know if I go to the point where I hit a wall, is kind of what I call it. If I get that like burnout or, and just like I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm not fine. It takes me longer to get back to where I was. And or to my baseline, right? And that
Yes.
it's baby steps every day of, okay, I slept 20 out of 24 hours. That's not good. But the next day
Yeah.
I slept 16 hours. Okay, we're doing better.
Exactly.
We
Exactly.
spent more time awake because
Ex-
one of my warning signs is too much sleep. If I'm sleeping too
Gotcha.
much,
Right.
I've
That's
got a
true.
problem.
That can also be a right. That's true, especially if someone struggles with depression. That can be a sign of that. So you're absolutely right. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. But having that balance. So yeah, when I for me when I got to the point where got more balance in terms of my health and sleeping, then and only then did I slowly start thinking about serving others through my business again. Because, like they
Yeah.
say, if you're not good for yourself, how the I can't,
Yeah.
bleep are you going to
Right.
be good?
You can always curse with me offline though,
I
right? So
know. I know for professional reasons, but how are you, how are you going to be good for anyone else? So
right.
it was that type of thing, and through our careers, we are serving people. We are
Yes.
most people, unless you're working with a robot all day or something, but most
Right.
people we're serving other human beings in some capacity. So you really have to serve yourself, first.
Mhm.
So before again, success was interviews, clients, making money, achieving titles,
Yes.
flying here or there. But again, it shifted when I was in my lowest to if I was able to get through the day and sleep okay at night, that was my new norm for success. And this can apply to, again, anyone. If you don't take care, we have to fully take care of ourselves, as mentioned. Otherwise, we really will not be able to optimize our career, or even if we do still do great things in our
Right.
career, but we feel less than optimal, then it doesn't really have, for me, it wouldn't have much meaning. And
Right.
you find this often with people that are going through mental health challenges where they can be rich and famous and all of these things, but it really doesn't mean anything if they're not right, mentally. So
Right. Yeah. If
right,
they're not in a good headspace, it's just
right,
not landing. It's just like it's that constant movement, but it doesn't mean it's meaningful.
exactly.
Um, and thinking about you know my own success and what I think about as in relation to my mental health as well. As we've gone through a lot of change in our business in the last 6 months or so, and we've really um, played a little bit of musical chairs, rethought about how we support our clients, rethought about who's on the team and how we're delivering, and all of these things. And in that change, I took a lot more client service delivery back on individually, whereas I've just been running the business for years, and
Yes.
in the last few months, I've taken on direct client service again, and honestly, that added so much meaning to my day.
Mm,
Where I thought before that my success was that I had built a business that I didn't that I was able to just run and not physically, maybe work in. Um,
sure.
but I got too far removed from the work I really, really loved doing, and that's supporting my clients one on one. And so I've been able to find this new balance of working directly with our clients in addition to working with our team, and that has really where I would have seen that as a failure before because it meant that our cash flow wasn't where it wanted to be, or it wasn't at a certain team size or whatever. I find that actually now that I've had some time to really think about what that means for myself and my mental health and my sense of worth, it's been hugely positive.
That's amazing. And I'm a firm believer. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with money or nice
Right,
things. I love
exactly.
that.
Like
I love that too.
right, yeah, we
However,
want that too.
yeah, we want that too, universe. However,
Yeah, if we're trying to
however,
manifest, like, don't go away.
exactly, don't go away. However, I do feel my personal experiences when I'm doing something that I enjoy, including through work, I do feel more like I have more vitality and energy. It gives me that positive drive, and I feel like that kind of naturally attracts the other things that I want to have coming to me when I'm doing something that I enjoy. I've just noticed that in my own life. So I think
Yeah,
so. My point is, I think it's great that you're doing more work that you enjoy as well and balancing that.
it is. I'm spending a lot more time with our clients doing the work that is meaningful and not as much time like in the spreadsheets and the planning and the strategy. And it's like
Yeah.
sometimes I just want to get back to basics, right? And just what's going on in the world. I'm at this place right now, with kids and my husband and our lives where I'm just like, how do I make this simpler? Like life got a little complicated, and I need a little bit more, just like, I need a little more boring in my life. And I think that's where we
Mhm.
get to boundaries too. It's okay. And we talked at the top of the hour about needing to be perfect or have it all or do all these things, but it's okay to say no to stuff. And it can
Yes.
be hard if you're a recovering people pleaser, or you're used to, always responding to those work emails at 11 o'clock at night, or always
Mm-mm.
being available, or having the my door is always open policy. Please no, my door is not always open,
Right.
because I need I need to get stuff done. And and so I think when we're constantly available, then we have none of that time to shut off. So setting those boundaries is so incredibly important. And it's okay that you're not doing anything wrong by setting that boundary, right? It's protecting you, and it's protecting, the life you're trying to build through your work. And so I think that's
Absolutely.
something, boundaries with family, boundaries at work. I know one of the things I decided was okay to say no to is, my kids are very active in baseball, and my husband's coach often for teams that have nothing to do with my kids. And so, um, there's I could go to a baseball game every day, and like, if I went to everything everyone does, it would be every single day.
Yeah.
I know
Right.
that's one of the cause of burnouts for me. And so I'm like, it's not t-ball when they're in kindergarten and they have 6 games a year. This is like an insane schedule that can take over my life, and I know that's one of the things that lead to burnout for me. And so saying no and being okay missing stuff is fine, because I know that's what I need to lead a life that isn't, that is the life I need to be leading, and not hit that wall and then not be able to go. I'd rather have the choice of, am
Yep.
I going to attend or not, versus like, I can't get out of bed and I'm going to miss important stuff. Um,
Absolutely.
so I'd love to talk about some of those warning signs and those boundaries that you're able to set, to say, here's what I
Yeah.
need, or here's where I know I might be getting to a place. And maybe people can recognize some of those or there's warning signs in their own lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely have several things I can mention here. So, one is if your sleep starts changing, that's a big red flag, like we talked about. I know you're
Yeah,
talking about for
it
you,
is.
if you're sleeping too much, that could be a sign. For me, if I'm sleeping too little, that could be a sign. So
Right.
just knowing what your standards are with sleep. If your sleep starts changing, it's an indicator of something that could be off. Also, kind
Mhm.
of on the same sleep bent, if you're waking frequently during the night, and oh, maybe I'll share this brief story. I have a friend, my friend's sister and I were talking, a group of us, and she won't mind if I say her name. Her name is Manushka, and Manushka was saying that she takes a particular sleep medication. It helps her because she was waking up during the middle of the night having panic attacks about
Mm,
what she needed to do the next day, what she hadn't gotten done. And I've talked with someone else that experienced something very similar recently. And
yeah.
so that's a huge sign that there's some burnout or extra stress going on. Because if you're waking up at 3 in the morning, talking about, oh my God, I got this
Right.
project at work that I haven't finished, that is a sign that something needs to
Right.
change.
Something is wrong. Something is
Yes,
out of balance.
something is
Uh,
out of balance. I know we
Someone in
all
the
think about
comments
those
said,
things to some degree, but if it's like
yeah,
shaking you out of your sleep, that's definitely a warning sign. Another thing I would say is if you're constantly pushing through, like
yeah,
we all push, I push through, I'm sure
right.
you push through, but if it's to the point to where you're never taking a vacation,
Yeah.
working through lunch or every day, or feeling guilty about taking a break that you really need,
Hmm.
that's a red flag. You don't want your body to decide for you that it needs to
Yes.
shut down. So
Because if you
that's
need a break, your body is going to make you take a break.
that's true.
And I know that, for myself, if I'm pushing through, if I'm ignoring my warning signs and I'm just pushing and grinding, my body is going to hit a wall, and it's going to say, now you have to sleep for the next 48 hours, and it's going to take you 3 months to get back to normal. Right.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. And so like knowing what your
yeah.
limits are, on that, to tag on to that. Also when you stop enjoying things that you normally love, like I
Yeah.
I work out quite a bit. I know not everybody's a workout fiend, but for people that, let's say that they do work out, but then they find themselves having no motivation to exercise, or for anyone losing interest in family or friends, or hobbies. If everything
Yeah.
starts feeling like it's a task, or just like you're going through the motions, that's usually a sign that you're heading towards burnout.
Yes.
And then if you're snapping at loved ones, or your emotional fuse is kind of very short, that's a flag. I would say, as you mentioned, kind of with boundaries, if you start losing perspective, saying yes to everything,
Yeah.
that's not good. Or feeling like every email is an emergency. You mentioned, like, if you're people responding to emails at 11 o'clock at night. Hey, some people do you, boo. If that's your,
Right.
if that's really, if you love it, that's fine. But if you're doing
Right.
it because you feel like, if I don't do this, then, kind of more
Right.
in a crisis or anxious state of mind, that's usually a red flag. And
Right.
then
If
if
it's
you
like
start
constant reaction of like, oh, I've got to do
exactly,
this now. I've got to do that now. Couple of
exactly,
comments in the chat
yeah,
I'd love
oh
to
yeah,
point out. One person says, and we can't see who everyone is, so I apologize for not adding your name to this, but no can be a beautiful word.
I
And
agree.
I know we just talked about this, but I found as a mother saying no to things that I'm quote unquote expected to do, beautiful. It's made all the difference in my life. I wish it didn't take me to my 40s to figure that out, but here we are, and Lisa says, thank you, Deborah and Leslie, such an important conversation to have. I'm so
Oh,
glad you're here for this conversation. As Leslie and I were talking a couple weeks ago just about life and things and personal, I thought we need to have this conversation out loud.
yes.
And I'm so thankful that you were willing to do this with us.
Oh, it's a joy. It's one of the things that I'm very passionate about.
Yeah,
Yes.
I can tell, and you do such good work in this space, and just in general, everyone needs to follow Leslie.
Aw.
You have so much positivity and joy to spread to the world, and I think that's where that's why we don't see the struggles, right? Because you're a positive person. I know I am too, right? If anyone's done
Yes,
Strengths Finder, my number one strength is in the top whatever five is positivity, and that
yes,
doesn't mean I don't struggle deeply. And so those two things can happen in the same space.
absolutely. You can. I feel like having a thank you for mentioning that, because and thank you for Lisa and everyone who's joining into this wonderful discussion. I feel like, s- from my experience of talking with other people that tend to be positive, sometimes the
Hmm.
most positive people have gone through the most deep and debilitating things in life. And I think it's
Yeah.
sometimes that positive state of mind that can carry you through those times. Doesn't mean we're always positive 100%,
Right.
one every day, all day long. But I don't know where I would be if I didn't have that, instilled within me. Because
Right.
yeah. So I'm sure you
Exactly.
can
Like,
relate.
yeah, you have got to be, because if you don't, the dark thoughts can just take us down a rabbit hole we can't
That's
dig
true.
back out of.
That's very true.
And so being able to keep it in perspective, and it doesn't mean that, I have a good friend who's gone through an incredible amount of struggle in the last couple of years. I mean, just incredible struggle. And every time she says, but I know there are people that have it worse than me. And then
Oh,
something else crazy would happen. And she's like, but I know there are people that are struggling with this. And then finally things are piling up. And finally I said, like, it is okay to say, good Lord, what is going on? This really sucks. I'm like, get your point and I love your positivity, but at the same point, it sometimes like this, we can acknowledge that this is effing hard, right?
yes. But
You've had your fair share of it.
and I'm gonna say this not in the southern way, but no, seriously, bless her heart. I was literally
Right.
trying to say, bless her heart, because I understand where you're coming from as her friend. I also
Yeah.
understand too how she's conditioning herself, because
Yeah.
I think she's trying to keep herself in perspective that
Yes.
it could be worse. So I understand, because I've been there myself, but I also
Yeah.
understand where you're
Same.
coming from as her friend. Where you're
Like
like,
it's at some
it's
point it's
okay.
okay to acknowledge that, like,
Right.
wow.
It's okay. All right. You can have a mini meltdown. It's okay.
Right, exactly. Like no one's gonna blame you if you're like, actually, never mind. This is not
Right.
okay.
Right. I get
But
it.
thank you so much for joining us. We could have this
Yeah.
conversation all day. I think it's
Oh
so
my God,
incredibly
I
important.
know.
And I hope that this was helpful for everyone who's joining us, and this will be up on our YouTube channel and on our podcast for anyone who wants to maybe share this with a friend,
Yes.
maybe someone that needs to hear this, or you need your own pep talk again, right? But
Yeah.
please, follow Lesley and get her book, Madness to Manifestation. There is a link to it in the chat and to her website. It is so incredibly powerful for anyone who feels like they need to put on that face that I can do it all, I am all, I can achieve, but you're really, you're struggling, and it's okay, and know that other people are too. And thank you for having this conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you for having this conversation with me. And thank you to all who tuned in. Really appreciate it and hope we provided some valuable conversation for you to take with you in your lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll end with this last comment. Kimberly says, "I personally think the perspective, dismisses the fact that you're going through something, which is part of the spiral." And and you're right. I mean, you know, I think you have to find that balance between, keeping everything in perspective of what other people are facing, and maybe sometimes, and that's a one. I know we talked about warning signs. That's another warning sign for me, is if things become a really big deal that are not a big deal. That's when I know I'm not in a great mental space too. If I'm making, like, a whole thing, then I know that I'm probably not in a balanced place. And so I think keeping an eye on that perspective is so important. So thank
Yeah.
you again to everyone for joining us. And thank you, Lesley, for writing this important book.
Thank you so much, Deborah. And look forward to talking with you soon.
Thank you all.
Thanks.